Today we are learning basketball with Parker Fleming. Got to check out his Memphis Grizzlies Substack. I'm gonna go for it. Subsac. I
Oh
messed
no,
it
you
up off
had
the
it. You
top.
had it.
Subsacalitis. Subsacalitis.
Subsacalitis.
Subsacalitis.
Yes.
Nailed it. Nailed it. Right off the top.
Yeah.
Parker Fleming here covers the Grizzlies. Great insight here for Memphis basketball and covers the NBA draft. You can, find all that on his Substack. Be sure to subscribe at Paka_Flocka. How you doing today, Parker?
I'm doing great. So yeah, just a little origin story of Subsacalitis. So the original Big 12 in Memphis was 7'2", third string center, Jake Sakalitis, who was one of my favorite end of the bench guys as a kid because I was 7 years old and I was able to spell his name. So from that moment, I'm like, this is my guy. And obviously with Substack, it's a perfect play on words. And from there, it's perfect. But yeah, I'm glad to be on the show. Obviously been a fan of your work, fan of what Swish Theory puts out there as well. And excited to talk about Grizz Hoops.
Hey man, great backstory there. I'm sure once you can spell a word like that, you're ready for any spelling bee they about to throw at you. But that is a fun play on words with Substack. And yeah, I mean, we are here. Some crazy news. Memphis Grizzlies trade Desmond Bane for all the first round picks in the world. Cole Anthony, KCP. Bombshell news have hit some of the elements of the Orlando side. So on the podcast, and I really want to hear more of the Grizzlies side, a little bit more about Desmond Bane as a person, as a player off the court, and then what you think the Grizzlies are up to. I mean, they are obviously make some major overhaul changes after kind of staying the course for years. You have Taylor Jenkins, a perennial playoff team, Jaren, Bane, this depth. They're thought of as the young and up and coming team, the Thunder before the Thunder, with all these young, smart front office people finding all these great basketball players. And, suddenly they hit a snag, all the injuries and all that. Taylor Jenkins is out, front office is overhauled, and now Desmond Bane's out the door. But you get all these first round picks back. You still have John Morant, you still have Jaren Jackson Jr. It does feel like they have flexibility to go in pretty much any direction that they want from here, which, if you don't have a plan, flexibility is the next best thing. So,
Yeah.
where do you think they are kind of at as a franchise, overhaul at this, stage where their outlook is from here?
Yeah. Like first thing off the top, there hasn't been anything about a front office overhaul. It's been, so Zach Kleiman's still there. We haven't heard anything about anyone else in his front office being gone, from Tayshaun Prince, Rich Cho.
I said that and I misspoke. I was thinking of
It was
Denver.
the assistant coach because when they fired Taylor Jenkins, they also fired, I want to say it's Patrick St. Andrew and Noah LaRoche. Noah LaRoche was a basketball training savant with this unconventional offense. And then St. Andrew came from Milwaukee with Taylor Jenkins as well, was known for being, I guess, the offensive coordinator of that 2021 Milwaukee Bucks finals team. But it's crazy. It's crazy. If you told me that firing Taylor Jenkins 9 games before the season wasn't going to be the most shocking move of the year for the Memphis Grizzlies, I would have asked you if John Morant got traded. That's how shocking it was to see Desmond Bane get traded because, for one, I was actually out of town. My wife and I were at a wedding, and I was packing some stuff up and just kind of just in the process of just getting ready to go, just doing some last stuff on my computer before the drive to the airport. And then I look at my phone and saw Desmond Bane had gotten traded, and I was like, holy cow. And I will say, explaining to my wife that her favorite player got traded and having to say, like, they had to do it because of the picks, that doesn't work. But no, it was really shocking. And I know we'll get more into it, but it is more of a retool. I do think that they're kind of trying to tear it down or even take a year or two off. I don't think you could take a year or two off with John Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. in the middle of their prime, especially with the health the health history of John Morant. You know, you can even say the same about Jaren Jackson Jr., he had a foot injury in the 2022 offseason, and then, you know, he had that knee injury in the bubble. So, like, obviously, like, you still have John Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr., but it's just one of those things where, you know, you get it. Like, draft picks are a currency in today's NBA and with today's CBA, where if you're getting 4 first-round picks in a pick swap for Desmond Bane, and, I'm not going to go out there and say, like, yeah, I'm not going to go out and say that they, like, also, like, upgraded their positions, like, but I think KCP, like, is good for what the Grizzlies need. I mean, after the new year, shot 39% from 3, and he's a guy that has been a starting shooting guard defensive stopper on 2 championship teams this decade. Cole Anthony, I think, is going to be more or less the next piece as a trade, because he could be traded immediately with his contract. I think it's pretty favorable at $13.1 million next year, and then a $13 million team option in 26-27. I just think Orlando made a Godfather offer, and Zach Kleiman couldn't refuse.
Yeah, with that many picks, the blue chip piece element of the potential of the Phoenix Washington 2026 swap, the unprotected both in 2026, 28, and 30 technically. I mean, you really got to be a special player to turn down that package for anyone when you really think about just that package overall. And from Orlando's side, like, it's a calculated risk and a bet on themselves that this is the win now time, where a player like Bane just fits so perfectly with what they're trying to do that, you know, it's worth a bet on themselves to go all in and bet on this young core. So, you know, it makes sense both ways, and it could be a win-win where one of these picks turns out to be a really good player for the Grizzlies on either the rebuild on the fly, maybe a repackage, a retrade on the fly, as you say. Like, you could trade some of these picks with Cole and maybe bring some more help in. It's interesting. Do you think the hiring of Isolo after all this and all these trades, is this more inclination that you think maybe that's a package to then find more help for Ja and Jaren? Either one, maybe to make Ja happy and find more help this season, or is it maybe just a slow kind of on the fly rebuild where it is 1 or 2 years? Maybe you compete, but the West is so tough. You're competitive. You're still in the lottery. You still have a lottery pick for a year or two, but then, you know, you rebuild on the fly and it's one step back for the year or two to go 2 steps forward down the line.
Yeah, that's gonna be the really interesting part, just because the West is so competitive. Um, it's one of those things where, yeah, like you said, you can win 45 games in the Western Conference and still be the 10 seed. You know, the Dallas
That's
Mavericks
wild.
won the draft lottery with 38 wins. Like,
Mm.
that's not terrible, but it's one of those things. I think there's something in the middle where it's not like, oh, we'll just hope for getting two lottery picks, because, like, this is also an important part of the Desmond Bane trade. The 26th first round pick that they got was the worst of Washington and Phoenix's picks. The Phoenix Suns just finished ninth in the lottery reverse standings. They have the 10th pick. And, you know, unless the KD trade shakes out to be something that actually makes their team better, then you could be looking at another lottery pick right there. And then maybe you're looking at the last 2 years, you're like, wait a minute. Atlanta jumped up in the lottery odds. Dallas jumped up in the lottery odds. Why we can't turn this down. And so there's that element. But I'm not also, like, I think they want to get John Jaren help, but I don't think you're going to look up and be like, oh, all those picks in the Desmond Bane trade are gone, and now the Grizzlies have traded a few of their others. I don't think they're doing that either. I think they just saw an opportunity they couldn't pass on, because it's one of those things that's tough. Because I say this as somebody who has always been very high on Desmond Bane, and I have remained high on Desmond Bane, even though Grizzlies fans kind of soured on him a little bit towards the end of last season. But I think in this new CBA to pay 3 guys upwards of $35 million, you got to be sure that that's a championship core. And, you always saw where, with the Grizzlies and their trade pursuits, they went after OG Anunoby, they went after Mikal Bridges, they went after Alex Caruso, they went after Kevin Durant. They wanted to bring in a guy that could be more of a, to make more of a 3A, 3B with Desmond Bane, I don't, and then now that, Marcus Smart's value had deteriorated to a point where the expiring money that you got back for him was Johnny Davis and Marvin Bagley instead of getting a guy like Lonzo Ball. You got presented an opportunity where it's like, hey, now the Grizzlies have 10 first-round draft picks, 3 swaps, and they have 2 more mid-sized contracts that are available and ready to use for that next trade. So that's kind of how I've been looking at it as I've been processing this over the past few days.
Yeah, and as you say, like you're knocking on the door trying to find that last missing piece for this big three core, and it just doesn't happen. You just don't find the deal. You get this offer to essentially reset on the fly without hitting the hard reset for everything. You get to dip your toes in the lottery and stay competitive. It is the best of both worlds in that sense if you can figure it out on the court in the short term, and you still get a chance at a top 4 pick in arguably one of the best lotteries ever coming up. And that's the big what if that Orlando rationalized giving up and for a player like Bane. And to your point, I think that's what Orlando was doing, was they wanted their 3A 3B with maybe a Suggs and Bane now to Paolo's 1 and 2 with Paolo and Franz as their 1 and 2. So I think that is Orlando trying to make that same type of trade. And we live in this space where you can kind of go back and forth with, you send out picks for a star, and if it doesn't work out, you can probably get more picks for that same star down the road, or flip that star for another star. Like, there are a lot of shuffling chairs in this sense, but flexibility is key when the plan you're trying isn't necessarily working. But they take this move. They I'm sure they still, like, obviously with 2 stars in their prime, they plan to still be competitive. So, we'll see how it shakes out with the new offense. And, they do tend to, be competitive and play above their weight anyway. So, I'm sure we'll be seeing an exciting offense, especially with, Isolo's international experience and, Ja Morant hopefully being fully healthy, fully back. Would love to see his, return to full stardom, full form. And Jaren's just, one of my favorite players in the league, just an absolute star, like defensive anchor, three-point knockdown 3-point shooter who can cornerstone your defense and be the reliable offensive engine, or really just the ultimate play finisher, I guess, but like a clear number 1 guy on both ends of the floor when you need him to be. So the Grizzlies are in a good spot in that sense. And I do, KCP could bring good perimeter defense and will bring good perimeter defense right away. Like, that's his specialty, his calling card. And it is, likely due to the volatility of the 3 ball that he'll bounce back to his relatively higher percentage. And he's kind of on a relatively lower volume anyway. So that makes the percentage extra volatile, I think, year to year as well. Because, he's a good career 3-point shooter with just loads of championship experience. And, he'll fit in to that culture right away. And we'll see what Cole does. Like, if Ja misses time and they rely on Cole, like he's a capable, point guard that can run the offense, run some pick and roll, score a little bit. And like, he can be your spot starter, even if he's probably better as a 6-man, where he can be allowed to be a little streakier on hot and cold on any given night. But interested to see if they hold on to him, give him some opportunity, or, like you mentioned, maybe package him. But shifting to, Desmond Bane, as a person and as a Grizzly, like, I'd love to hear kind of how you'll remember him, how Grizzlies fans will remember him as his Memphis Grizzlies legacy on and off the court, as a leader, as a teammate, but also, with his experience, the ups and downs of the playoffs, and, getting to see his development as a late pick that you guys hit on. And that's got to just feel cool to see a player that was drafted so late just become, one of the most complete players. And I think a lot of people woke up to this news realizing, oh, he's not only a great defender and scorer, he is actually a top 5 3-point shooter in this league, and that almost flew under the radar because he's so complete.
Yeah. Wow. All right. So first off, with Desmond Bane, the person, I think that's what I want to put out there first. Unbelievable person. I got like one story I'll share is, so my wife's a St. Jude patient, been battling cancer for now 12 years, but for her 10-year anniversary of her diagnosis, I wanted to do something special. Desmond Bane's her favorite player. Set something up for her to meet him, and he was just genuine, great dude.
That's incredible.
Very, very cool to see. And he always did stuff around the community. He just dove into the community very quickly. I remember at first, like, it took a little bit after, like, after COVID, like, that's the one thing that kind of took a hit in the NBA is a lot of these people couldn't be like super present in the community. Obviously, they can give their financial support, they can do stuff virtually and stuff, but they couldn't be there in person with the community. And when Desmond Bane finally had the opportunity to do so, he dove right in and did that. Backpack drives, grocery shopping, having an AAU team, like this. He's all about community, and I think the biggest thing about Desmond Bane, the person, that really stuck out to me is, after the 22-23 season, they got knocked out in the first round. National media did this whole, like, the Grizzlies need to be humbled, which now it's hilarious because now you have the aura tweets where it's like, man, we missed this team. I'm like, y'all clowned this team and said they needed to be humble. I don't want to hear any of this. Like, like you had Kendrick Perkins be like, oh, like they need to be humble, but now it's like, oh, they lost their swagger. It's like, okay, what is it then? Like, what is it? Anyways, so in that presser, in that exit interview, Zach Kline and Taylor Jenkins, they really wanted John Morant, Desmond Bane, and Jaren Jackson Jr. to assume like the leadership role. Like these three guys are the leaders of the team. And I think Desmond Bane was the guy that took that to heart and took it and just grabbed it by the horns, that opportunity to be a leader, to be a vocal leader, to hold people accountable. It's one of those things like I observed, they brought Marcus Smart in to do all that. They brought Derrick Rose in to do that. And like, this is like, obviously no shade to those guys, but like last year I felt like, hey, this is Desmond Bane's team, in a sense where I always described like the leadership styles as, Desmond Bane is the leader. Jaren Jackson Jr. is the franchise, so he's like the guy that's just like he represents your organization. And then John Morant's the swagger of the team. When he's playing with that bravado and he's getting to the rim, he's being flashy and talking a little trash and taunting a little bit. The team feeds off of that, and I felt like, and this is what like with the Orlando Magic, like I don't know Paulo and Franz's leadership styles, but they have two dogs at the front line with Suggs and Bane. Like I cannot wait to see that. And before we like get into more on-court stuff real quick, like I had said, like my mission this all season is I wanted the East to be saved because you had this like the West was like a buzzsaw, and in the East it's like you had like it's like, oh, this team that's kind of like fielding out these lineups with 10 days and 2-way contracts and bench guys, like they're like 4 games out of the play-in, I kind of just, and then you have this, but I thought I was like, all right, Adam Silver, help out the lottery here, and no help at all, except for the Philadelphia 76ers and Charlotte Hornets, which, congratulations, 3rd and 4th pick. You don't get Dylan Harper or Cooper Flag. But after the lottery, I'm like, and after seeing Indiana, I'm like, somebody in the East, 3 teams, just be gutsy and make that splashy move, because we always saw it from the same teams out east. It was always the Bucks, the Celtics, or the Knicks, or the Cavs. And in the Indiana, they followed suit. They got Pascal Siakam, and after all their moves on the margins, and now they're a legit finals team. I always looked at Orlando because I'm like, Franz, Paulo, and Suggs. That's something. They have something there. They have the elite defense. If they just become more competent offensively, this is a team that's a contender. They got aggressive and got one of the most complete offensive shooting guards in the NBA. And something I was telling you before the show, I could not pull up anymore because they are doing something on dunks and threes. But his, like, if you look at, like, you know, the stat head comps or even like the EPM numbers, Desmond Bane's production's right there with Devin Booker and Jaylen Brown. Like, he's unbelievable. He's an unbelievable two-way player. Obviously, there's other teams, but we're talking about the Orlando Magic. Everybody always wants to say, who wins the trade? This is a win-win trade. This is a fantastic trade. But yeah, Ryan, let's talk on let's talk about the on-court stuff. If there's anything in particular you want to know, hit me, and we'll see where this goes.
Yeah, well, first off, you know, I'm sorry to hear about your wife, and hope she has, you know, a full recovery, and that it was a very touching story and a cool story that Bane was able to come by and meet her, and y'all were able to have that moment together, and also explains how tough the trade was as well, because that, you know, it makes the news a lot to do with. That means a little bit more, and I'm sure, you know, that's kind of a cool part of fandom as well, how basketball can reach people off the court, and I'm sure people with the Luka trade in Dallas feel very similarly. Anytime there's a player that means a little bit more to a city, you know, gets moved, it hurts. So it's a big change. But you know, with his leadership, like immediately he sounds like the adult in the room, like wise for his years, like he's. Yep. You know, just the older brother type that's gonna show you what to do next, and that is nice to hear and see for this young group that, you know, can use those veteran voices in the locker room. There aren't as many vets on average in NBA locker rooms these days, so to actually, like, for you to see the development of a young vet up close almost, and now he gets to use that basically is veteran in today's league by the average age of the player at about 26, or their late prime, essentially, because teams just give so many young players so many opportunities now. That's just how it's shifted. So that you need those guys, and you know, a good locker room presence immediately just is the vibe that you kind of feel. But obviously it's, you know, first impressions interviews, but that was all, you know, good to hear off the top. But you know, I would love to hear about him on the court as well, and you know, what skills would you say are his calling card? What skills would you say are maybe he's developed over the years? And as one of the most complete guards, is there something that you think, like, could really help him, say, in the playoffs, where he has had, you know, some up and down experiences and, you know, will get criticized, or is it as simple as, you know, hitting his shots in the big moments?
Yeah. The thing with Desmond Bane is I found that each year he just had something he was doing noticeably better. Obviously, his second year he took that leap and just tried to, you know, he was a little bit more of a creator, not fully, but, you know, he started revving up the volume. It was more about, all right, let's get shots up. Now you're not just the catch and shoot guy, 3-and-D guy. Put the ball on the deck a little bit, create a little bit, and just let it fly from three. 22-23, you know, more of the same, but you saw a little bit more of the mid-range, more of the passing, playmaking as well. He had to do it more in 23-24 with John Morant's injury. But last year, you know, the last 2 years, really, you know, he's shooting 68% of the rim, 48% on long twos, and then 39% from three, from cleaning the glass. But the thing with Desmond Bane is, as he's gotten to be complete and gotten to be this 3-level scorer, you know, the moniker that the broadcast team would call him downhill Des, because he has this weird gear where you don't expect him to be fast, but you're like, he'll have a couple drives every now and then where he has his gear. You're like, yo, I did not anticipate that. So he can push the pace a little bit. He's got to be a physical finisher, added more to his layup package. But with that said, his handle and ball pressure, and he admitted this like in next interviews, like, you know, he was exposed by OKC's ball pressure and his ball handling. He had a career high in turnover rate at 12.7, it's the 35th percentile among wings. And that's also because he gets sped up and he doesn't have that and he has a subpar handle. And then also too, last year's team, like he was being asked to create more without ball screens. So that kind of leads to turnovers as well. So, but I think the thing with Desmond Bane and his skill set that would bode well for Orlando is while he can do all that, while he's a guy that can add rim pressure, while he's a guy that if you chase him off the line, he can get to his mid-range, while he's a guy that could facilitate, like, the thing now that's great is instead of just getting this true point guard, he's co-piloting that, where now it's like, okay, they'll have some actions where Paulo's the initiator, Franz is the initiator, Suggs is the initiator, Dez is the initiator. Like, they have that optionality where now it's teams can't, like, it's going to make it harder on the scouting reports where it's like, okay, like you're not focusing on this is the guy that we're going to get at the point of attack, you know, like, because there's different options. But I had always said going into this offseason, I said the next step for Desmond Bane is getting back to just the simplicity of his game. And that's with the 3-point shooting. If you look at his numbers, his 3-point volume has gone down. Granted, that also comes with the territory of being an elite shooter. But if you look at his 3-point attempt rate since the 21-22 season, 47.5 in 21-22, then 43.3, 46.4, and then last season a career low 41.1. Desmond Bane is too good of a shooter to be a guy that's shooting 6 threes a game. He needs to be shooting 8, 9, 10 threes a game. And I think if he becomes a guy that's shooting 8, 9, 10 threes a game, even if he's taking less twos, even if he's taking less shot attempts, he can still average 20, 21, 22 a night and be a potent all-star level shooting guard. And I think now in this infrastructure where he's in a new environment where, you know, he's coming in being asked to elevate their offense, being asked to elevate the 3-point shooting, where now it's, oh, I'm feeding off the gravity of Paulo Banchero, off Franz Wagner, two huge forwards that can get downhill, distribute the ball a little bit. I think you can, like, I think Desmond Bane, for one of the best player development arcs I've seen. Like, it's unbelievable how he's become a 4-year guy that was a 3-and-D guy to now this complete two-way. And I will say with two-way, like, he's a good defender. He's not a great defender. He's a good defender. And it's more so because of his strength. But, like, I think he's also not going to be asked to defend the opposing guy's best player each night. That's Jalen Suggs. That's Franz Wagner. He's going to be on the third best player. And that's an asset for him. That's a luxury that was a little bit lost for him when the Grizzlies traded away, or when Dylan Brooks walked and then they traded away Mark Smart. So, but anyways, with Dez, I think now, with that said about his completeness, his development arc, now that he can go to Orlando and be in a spot where he can rely on the simplicity of his game and really hone in on being a guy that's going to shoot 8, 9, 10 threes a game, it's going to open up the floor for the Orlando Magic. And it's going to be very fun to watch because I think now in the Eastern Conference, he's a guy that can very well flirt with making an all-star team next year.
There it is. That's the way that's the take we were waiting for, you know, all-star on the way. And what the key point I think that you nailed is that his arrival in Orlando could really kind of put everyone in their ideal role where they're not asked to do too much. And, you know, if Bane's biggest problem at the moment is his handle, then asking him to create too much off the dribble would be asking him to do too much. But I was curious kind of how that development looked like with, John Morant, as you mentioned, John Morant misses all this time between suspensions and injuries. I'm sure Bane is just getting more and more on ball touches. And there was, almost a season or two there where it felt like as you said, the Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson show. And, that those reps should be valuable towards his decision making down the line and his ability to create down the line, but he probably won't have to do that as often, of course, with good injury luck in the Magic situation. So I think that part is key. How, you don't have to ask Suggs to do too much. You can have him focus on his best skill, that point of attack, screen navigating defense, and Desmond Bane being a plus defender. As you say, you're not asking him to lock down the other team's best player. Now he can just be a part of a team defensive system that is an elite team defense where someone else can take the responsibility of guarding the other team's best guard. He can save his energy for 3-point shooting and scoring when some of the other scorers are on the bench or not feeling it or whatever the matchup dictates. So, I think those are all key points, and one of the big perks of trading for another star when you have a few stars already, and it's just a perfect complementary fit in that sense, where the shooting should unlock the play finishing and the off ball movement for the bigs, and as you say, just provide more space for just about everyone down the line. And I've been saying for quite some time that a high volume pull up 3-point sniper, someone that can pull up for three, not just catch and shoot, but pull two defenders out onto the perimeter when they have the ball, that is what was going to unlock this offense. And we're about to see, like, Zach Lowe will let you know that, the Magic haven't had a whatever his favorite stat is, a top 20 offense in like the last 12 years. It's coming, baby. I mean,
it's coming.
It's around the corner. Like, I think this offense does certain things well. Like they rely on their big stars to get downhill, to draw fouls, and they're both good for 20 points a night. And they just don't have that volatile 3-point shooting factor that their team might hit 15 threes any given night. And I think it's for a handful of reasons, but a player like Bane should really open up that floor. And then combining that with the return of Jalen Suggs, also coming back from injury, and also both of them just kind of, to this point, returning to smaller off-ball roles where they're not going to be asked to create too much for others as much as just play 3-point connectors.
Yep.
And I also like that you brought up Jaylen Brown, because, and in a similar way, Tyrese Halliburton, maybe not as player comps, but as like player development storylines, like the idea that they came into the league as one thing, but we continue to see them develop new skills almost every season, and they just continue to get better and better. And that's a credit to their work ethic, their mindset, their development arc, and all that. Just the idea that they recognize the weakness and are able to work on it and make it better. And when I was trying to think who is the closest player to Desmond Bane in the league, because like when you really look at it, the Magic's targets were all offensive minded guys that I figured the team defense would have to make up for. They found a guy that at least brings plus defense, but also is a lights out shooter and is also a capable, proven 20 points a game scorer, and he can play, make, and pass and make the right read. So like, how many players are like that? And I was trying to think of it earlier, like maybe some Celtics backcourt guys, like you mentioned, like a Jaylen Brown. I thought of maybe a Derek White, but there's just not many guys that really check all the boxes that he does, and it's awesome for the Magic that they recognize that talent, that rarity, but also that that exact skill set fits so well with so many of the needs that this team just desperately needs to make a dramatic push. And the picks are worth it when this team is trying to win now, and not trying to rebuild or on the fly. And that's what the flexibility is for kind of both sides of this trade. So like, you can rebuild on the fly if you're flexible, but if you have the flexibility, you can retool on the fly like this as well. So it's super interesting trade that I think both sides are going to be pretty happy with the outcome, because there's a good chance that one of these picks could pop off into a star for the Memphis Grizzlies. And either way, just the idea that one could makes them valuable pieces that could be moved again for maybe a more proven star if Ja or Jaren gets a little antsy and says, it's time to start winning again.
Yeah. For sure. For sure. I will say one thing on the creation note with Dez. I'm looking at the data baller stat line shifts. With if you talk about like the responsibility of creation versus shooting, with John Morant on the floor, Desmond Bane shot 45.8% from three. Woo. When he was not on the floor with John Morant, that number dipped to 34.9, which is not. That's also just not a. That's not a good indication of how good of a shooter Desmond Bane is. But it shows that how potent he can be when he's not tasked to being a primary ball handler. And then also
Absolutely.
another
And
thing on
to that point, Jalen
yeah,
Suggs, very similar. Same type of thing happened last year with his role. His 3-point percentage tanked because all of his threes came above the break pull up. The year before, lights out, 40% 3-point shooter, high volume. He was off ball the whole time.
yeah,
And, that for certain shooters, it's a drastic difference. They're different shots.
yeah, for sure. And then he's also just a guy too. Like I talk about like running off the line. He's like an shoot shooter because it's like when he gets the ball and he has space, defense have to scramble. And now that he has this completeness in his game where if you run him off the line, it's like, oh, he can get to that mid range, he can get to the rim, he can drive, and next thing you know, he finds another shooter, he finds the corner, he finds a cutter, he finds a dunker spot. Another thing too that he does really good, and I hope this maybe unlocks something with either Wendell or Goga Badatsi is, or even he could do it with Franz and Paulo, is like he had really good big man synergy. It really showed with Steven Adams where if he's with a big man that can pass and screen the ball well, whether it's off of threes or picking like a zoom action, pick and roll, or even just kind of getting to that elbow jumper, like Desmond Bane has that in his bag. But to the Grizzlies' point, they have these picks now, and there's just so much optionality. Like they have so many ways they can go about it.
Yeah.
It's
Do you have
exciting.
a prediction for this season? Which direction that might be? Do you think they go any drastic direction right now that you see a different star or a different player, or they just keep all the picks and make all the picks and just start rebuilding on the fly and take it slow?
So I'm gonna do a mock offseason this week, and one thing that I would be very interested to do is using the 16th pick, perhaps even trading down with Brooklyn and say, hey, if you take on John Konchar's salary, for $6 million, we'll give you 16 if you give us 19 or 26. I would do something like that because they also had the renegotiation and extension with Jaren. Now, like you're not only increasing your cap space because you're trading away a guy making a non-rotation player making $6 million, but you're also lowering the cap hold on your draft pick as well. So
yeah, two cheaper draft picks.
But that Zach Kleiman's also never traded down though, so I don't think that's going to happen either. But
how about I don't know, Kevin Durant? Does he like Memphis barbecue? Anything like that?
There's already been reports out there that the Grizzlies are not pursuing Kevin Durant. It's one of those things that's tricky because for one, it's going to require either Jaren Jackson Jr. or John Morant. Matt Ishbia is probably going to be asking for Jaren Jackson Jr., former Michigan State big man. But also too, with the aggregate, they can now get there in the aggregate salaries with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Cole Anthony, Brandon Clark, Santi Aldama side in trade, but now you're like, because Cole Anthony and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope can't get aggregated into a trade and like for another 60 days, you're putting your whole offseason on hold off a handshake trade. I just don't think that works. Also, too,
a fun what if though.
It's a fun what if,
and Giannis too. But Durant is top of the news right now. But Durant and Ja seem to like each other. They seem to be cut from the same cloth as real hoopers.
Yeah,
it would be. It's a fun 2K idea more than maybe real life. But the aggregate does. You can't really freeze your off season to do something like that.
Right, and it's one of those things too where Ja already has a shaky health record. So does Kevin Durant.
Yeah,
it's basically like I always describe it like it'd be like a sweet little like 20 games of aura ball, but you would never get them on the court at the same time.
It'd be the Kyrie, Harden, KD Nets. Like, awesome for a couple weeks there.
It's one of those things that's crazy where Zach Kleiman's been reported out there to put like 4 first-round picks on the table for Mikal Bridges, and they three for OG Anunoby. in 2023, Zach Lowe reported that they put all their picks and swaps on the table for Kevin Durant. Like, I can see them just being like, hey, Milwaukee, here's all 10 first-round picks and 3 swaps for Giannis. Like, I can see him doing that. Like, so, yeah, hey, look, good barbecue and tax-free state. Like, come
All
on.
right.
Like,
Got some music down there.
well, no, yeah, good music. But no, I would put more money on them using their pick this year, just because
Okay.
I do think that 16 is, you study the draft, like it's a good sweet spot. Like I don't, like, yeah, the class lost depth after the whole NIL stuff, but we're talking about they lose depth at like 25 and down. They didn't lose depth in the top 20. Those guys are staying.
Yeah, that's a good point. So we could hit on a few last options here if you have time for maybe your favorite sleepers in the draft that let's say after the lottery, obviously someone could slip out of the lottery. But since the Grizzlies are sitting at 16, is there anyone stands out for you in that range or even later in the draft that you're a big fan of either as a late riser or just kind of a sleeper, maybe isn't talked quite about enough or just someone you like for Memphis at 16?
For sure. I'm going off of ESPN's mock of like who's available. But obviously like they still have Cedric Howard in the 20s, and I think if Cedric Howard is on the board for Memphis at 16, they got to run to the podium. Like,
there you go.
Like
I hope
frankly,
the Magic take him at 25, so I don't really think he probably won't be there with this rate.
right. But I'm also like, he's also kind of a guy that I can see San Antonio and OKC taking. So like I'm kind of tempted to be like, hey, Orlando, or hey, Atlanta, here's the 16th pick and one of these Magic picks. Can we get up to 13 and get Cedric Howard? Like I would. Neat Clifford is always a guy that's been mentioned as a Grizz guy because, he's a beast in the possessions game, good playmaker, and he just has the physical tools in the maturity where it's like he's going to be ready to play NBA minutes day one. I think he's the guy that outside of Cooper Flag, I think he's the first guy to have a playoff moment of this draft class. And then like two more guys that I like in the range, but let me give one more guy I like in the range for Memphis, and that's Thomas Sorber, because I know he's coming off the foot injury, but just a stocks machine, crashes the offensive glass, good passer, and it's one of those things where it's like Zach Edey is starting the year off hurt. They obviously need a center. And I'm not saying they need to replace Zach Edey during his absence with a rookie big, but what if you can get Thomas Sorber to back up? You have him back up Brandon Clark, but also too, if you deal Brandon Clark, then maybe you sign like a Luke Cornett with your room exception and have Sorber back him up, and then now it's like, okay, Zach Edey's back, and you have Sorber that just is ready, can get those reps whenever. But also too, like if Sorber's better than you expected, now you have a guy like Cornette at $8 million as another trade chip. You know what I mean? So that's another guy I like for Memphis. And then just two guys I like in the range where I see polarizing takes on draft Twitter, or even on the consensus on these guys. But ESPN had them taking Jace Richardson, and while I don't want Memphis to draft Jace Richardson, and it's mainly because they already have John Morant, Scottie Pippen Jr., I just think you're small after that. I just think that he's very good, and I think everyone's kind of underestimating how good he could become as a primary, like almost 70% at the rim, and he's also like 45% from three on catch and shoot threes this year. And then he also, I looked back at his grassroots numbers, and he was the third playmaker behind the Boozer twins at Columbus in his senior year. But he averaged a little over 3 assists a game on a 3-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. I just think his feel's off the charts. I think he's like I think he could be a Mike Conley type player. I think he's that good. And I'm not just saying that because the jersey's behind me. I just had that feeling because he has his handle flexibility. He's a quick decision maker. But one of the things that he does, and this is like the the small skill that might be my favorite of the draft class, he's always in motion. Like, what he's going to end up doing is he's going to be like moving off ball, and the next thing you know, a guy's getting downhill, he moves to an open pocket of space, and he's going to be wide open from three. And he makes quick decisions. I just think he's a guy to bet on. And then just one more guy, like, you know, he could be sold as a Grizz guy or because he is a big wing that's kind of stocky and he can shoot. It's Liam McNeely. I've seen a lot of people sour on him in draft Twitter. But the thing I go back to Liam McNeely, and it's been a valuable lesson for me in this journey covering the NBA draft, feel and context. I think Liam McNeely has feel that he didn't really get to show in college. Because for one, the ankle injury was a hindrance. Like, he had a severe ankle sprain. I think that had to play. He's already not the most athletic and doesn't have the most burst. But UConn took a severe playmaking hit. They went from having Stephon Castle, Donovan Clingan, Cam Spencer, Tristan Newton to Solo Ball. Trying to even think of more of their trying to think of more of their playmakers kind of sells it right there that, like, it took a big playmaking hit and they relied on Liam McNeely to kind of play with outside his skill set. And, like, hey, credit to him. He got to be put in uncomfortable situations that may help him grow. But I just think he's a better shooter than he's going to show. The touch indicators are unbelievable. I think he's going to get downhill a lot easier when now he's playing off of the gravity, being a complimentary floor spacer. And I just kind of noticed too that UConn just had a little bit more edge and tenacity when he played, and he was already kind of the guy that would kind of bring everybody into, like, he just has this competitive fire. And, like, also I watched him in Memphis when Mount Verde came to Memphis and played, and they're playing this like regular high school team. They're good, but they're not like a prep school. And, you know, Cooper Flag is like coasting because he can. Like, he could play at 50%. It doesn't matter. He's still the best player on the floor. This dude was going 100%. I just think if you're talking about size, feel, shooting, and he has his size, he can defend. Like, I think he's not going to be the best defender, but he's not going to be a liability. I'm big into feel, into context, contextualizing. Okay, this is what a player can do. How is this going to translate to what their role is? And I just see that fit with Liam McNeely more than what others may not be seeing. Like, in the least, I'm not trying to be condescending at all, but I'm just saying I think that's just a guy I'm going to bet on in that range. Not necessarily for Memphis because it's still a little bit of a dicey pick. And for me, I'd rather go with like a Cedric Howard, Nick Clifford, and, you know, who knows how the draft shakes out, where, you know, people might get spooked by the fact that Colin Murray-Boyles is 6'6" and doesn't shoot. If they get Colin Murray-Boyles, like, that's a dude that's going to win a championship someday. Like, I think he's that kind of player. So, yeah, long-winded answer on your question, but those are all the guys I kind of like that are in that range.
Hey, a lot of great thoughts there. Yeah, I mean, CMB is a winner, just super smart defensive feel. I did pose a question to some friends the other day, basketball idea of like what might you target in this draft with Jaren Jackson as your, you know, other big? Like, do you go super big, kind of like you had Steven Adams there, the power, the rebounds, the rim rolling, the toughness with the rim protector next to Jaren, who also obviously a great elite help side rim protector, and then, or do you go a little smaller, like and put Jaren at center? And I think ultimately he's best as this kind of a stretch four with the help at the center, and you have Edey in hand as well. So it is an interesting exercise. If a CMB or a Maluak or Sorber is a great shout. If Queen fell or something, that it's very interesting. But Sorber's a great shout because, I mean, the defensive prowess of Jaren Jackson help defense and Thomas Sorber post up defense, that anchor, he is like as top right as you can go on the charts that I've been seeing and making that have anything to do with defense and being effective at the rim. So a great shout there, really smart passer as well. So you get a connective hub with that with that elite defense down low, and some good shouts. I actually caught McNeely and Jace play each other in a head-to-head back in high school here in Orlando, Mount Verde versus Columbus out of Miami at the time. and got to meet Jay Rich. Shout out Jay Rich, Magic legend,
Yep.
in the process. But it was really cool. I definitely agree with a lot of what you said there. I mean, I think with Liam, like especially like that, the context is so key. Like he played a role, I think, in that Mount Verde offense, which was essentially a super team, but like almost closer to an NBA lineup than what he'll see or he saw at UConn, where he was asked to be the lead guy, create everything. Like you're saying, they have all of their lead playmakers have been drafted, so they have to
Right.
restock. And that it to me it overtasked Liam a little bit in that role. That, like you said, didn't show off his natural feel. Like I think he is a natural connector and a lethal 3-point shooter. Like he was like the guy. Like he definitely thought he was the guy, and then he would show up and do the things that made him the guy in these games. Like that in these games with the Boozer twins, Derek Queen, Asa Newell, Cooper Flagg, Jace Richardson, it was Liam McNeely who would come out as the leading scorer with 23, 25 points. And part of it is playing off of those guys. But to me, I envision him in like a Malik Monk type of role next to Sabonis, where you have some handoff chemistry, and he's not the explosive athlete that Monk is or the crazy angle shooter that Monk is, but just the role of being able to be a catch and shoot 3-point shooter, being able to attack the closeout very aggressively and attack the rim, try to dunk on your head. That always stood out to me about his game, is that aggressive nature, and then a tough shot maker. Like he could walk into a pull-up three in transition, and definitely had some chemistry with Flagg in a similarity that Knipple does this year at Duke. But just being able to have that, like be a very nice closeout attacking option off of the Cooper Flagg kind of drive and kickouts that he would do. And with Jace, that shooting touch really stood out to me. Like he was just making tough floaters, tough mid-range shots, high arcing shots, nothing but net. And to your point, like relocating, knowing where to be off the ball, that really like basic winning habits that kind of probably come from being the son of a pro and getting that guidance in the background. And maybe it's just his being around the game growing up, picking those up as well. So some great shouts in the as kind of in that mid first range. I was trying to think of like a classic Grizzly, like a grit and grind Grizzly. Maybe I thought of Javon Small, but it's a little later. But
but they do have 2 second-round picks.
All right,
the guy I really want to fall so bad to that 48th pick is Sion James. I'd be over. There you go.
That's a good one.
James. But no, and I will say, like, I don't. If any Grizz people listen, I do want them to be aggressive this summer. I do want them to. So I think in the Western Conference, you got to have a bona fide third best player, and maybe they do the Indiana route where they have a lot of guys that might top out as the 4th or 5th best player on one of these really good teams. But because you have a collection of them between Andrew Nembhard, who I think's now become like a 3rd best player on a really great team, but Andrew Nembhard, Aaron Nesmith, Benedict Mathurin, Miles Turner, Opie Toppin, you have these guys that can kind of interchangeably do that role. Cool. That's great. You also still need more of those guys. I don't like, obviously Zach Edey's hurt. Brandon Clark's coming off another knee injury, and he might just be more of a trade chip now because undersized big going into 30s with 2 lower body injuries kind of scares me a little bit. Even though I love Brandon Clark, one of my all-time favorite Grizzlies, to be honest. But Santi Aldama took a sizable leap, but you still need more of those guys. Because I don't know Contavious Caldwell Pope qualifies for that. There's ideas that like I would toss out there. Like, do they go get? I don't think they can get Trey Murphy, but can they go get Herb Jones, especially with New Orleans reported interest in Ace Bailey, or can they use the Cole Anthony contract to do a sign and trade with Nickeil Alexander-Walker? Because now in a sign and trade, or now with a Cole Anthony trade, they can trade for him for a salary up to $7.5 million greater than what he makes now, which means in a sign and trade, they can now pay Nickeil Alexander-Walker more than the mid-level. So they just like, and also like another like piecing things together. The Kings need a point guard, and they have a traded player exception that fits right into Cole Anthony's money. So I don't know. I'm just like something like that maybe. And then also too, Dallas has a need at point guard, and they have this kind of glut of bigs and big forwards, which kind of makes things a little cramped for Cooper Flag? Do they have Cole Anthony be the stopgap until Kyrie's back, and then Memphis can get either PJ Washington or Najee Marshall or Daniel Gafford to spell for Brandon Clark? Like, that's another trade pairing that seems like a good match made in heaven too. I don't know what's in line, but I do think they got, if your objective is to win games with Jaren Jackson Jr. and try to compete for a championship with Jaren Jackson Jr. and John Morant as your core, you have to still fortify that playoff depth and just really see where it can go. Now you have the assets. The only asset I would not touch unless I'm getting an awesome player back is that 26 Magic pick, because now I'm just pushing the Cam Boozer Memphis Grizzly with the Suns pick agenda.
Oh man,
I will. Yeah, so that's what I'm rooting for. But you know what? I'm excited to see where the offseason is going to go, because at first it didn't look that exciting beyond just renegotiation and extension with Jaren, but now they had this trade, and this trade with Desmond Bane. I have not been sad about a trade since I was a kid. It made me sad to see Desmond Bane leave, but this is a win-win trade, and honestly, if I'm glad that if he went anywhere, not only is it in the Eastern Conference, but it's with the Orlando Magic. So,
hey, that means a lot. You know, I mean, I'm right there when the Oladipo trade went down. I was just devastated that night. So I can totally understand it. I've been sad ever since, to be honest. So now it's time to get happy again. The Magic are back.
They're so bad.
Making big things. That's what matters here. And you know, I have a parting stat for you. And lastly, also could maybe Asa Newell falls to there. I'm a fan of him. I think he's a complete guy. Him. Yeah, I mean, I think he's a complete player who could slip to 16 and kind of provide some nice depth for a team that's trying to win now. I don't love the fit for Danny Wolf, but I think I am a big fan of him at there, but not really the fit there. But you know, there's a lot of fun talent, and you know, if they want to win now, guy like you said, like a Nick Clifford, a Cedric Howard, maybe those guys could help pretty quickly, or a Rasheer Fleming, like some in the front court of Carter Bryant. I thought a dice roll. I have him 16th on my big board. It could change, but Ado Thero.
Okay.
A little bit of a dice roll, big wing. You have the athleticism. You have, and you know, maybe you just take a roll on a big wing, and at that point in the draft with a little bit of upside. But maybe a Noah Senyu with the same idea, but that I have much higher. And Joan Behringer is also seeing his name kind of thrown around pretty high, so that might be another name where these are some high potential risks that you know could pay off with a late draft pick if the team goes potential. But I kind of expect them to go more on the competitive route the way you've outlined. So we're just hitting some draft options.
That's right.
The parting stat for you via Josh Cohen, only Desmond Bane and Steph Curry all time shooting at least 40% from three with an average of at least 10 attempts per 100 possessions, while also averaging at least 6 assists per 100 possessions. So showing off his little 3-point connector with a nice little Steph stat. I've seen a few of these only Bane and Steph stats floating around. We'll take as many of those as you got this offseason.
That's
you know,
right.
Whatever goes into those stats. And to your point you made a little bit earlier, I don't know the last time the Magic have had a 3-point shooter that defenses have to respect and scramble for, as you say, Bane requires. And that is the shooting gravity that we are talking about that should just open up just about everything for this offense. So cannot wait to see it. And really appreciate you taking the time today, Parker. You have anything you want to plug here at the end of the show?
For sure. Yeah. I appreciate you having me on the show. Again, I think, and obviously you're in this crew too, I think the Swish Theory group is very smart basketball minds.
Appreciate it.
And
right back at you.
So I think, I hope that's a good sign for me if I'm on one of these shows. But I will say one note too, Noah Esingwe is another player where if he's on the board at 16, I'm sprinting to the podium. I have him 4 on my board. I think he's so good.
Yeah, I got the upside there, right there with you. Like I've tinkered a little, but he's at 6 at the moment. But you know, top 5 upside type of guy, and it doesn't like we get bogged down with these rankings. Like he's a top prospect in this draft, and like he is an incredible defender, play finisher. The development curve has been super rapid and super impressive to see. So a little half court skill development. There's a real impressive player there, but. You know, the Grizzlies can go in a whole mess of directions. Can't wait to see how it plays out, and appreciate you taking the time today, Parker.
100%. Yeah, real quick plug. Grizzlies and draft content on my Substack.
Substack Elitas.
Substack Elitas. There we go.
That's how we do it.
It's a free page, but if you decide to give monetary support, it all goes to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. And then my 2025, my second annual NBA Draft Guide comes out on Monday to the public. It has my big board, philosophy, some takes on the class, and 60 single-page scouting reports with my last 15 of my top 75 big board, just having elevator pitches. It's been a multi-month process, and I'm really excited of how it's going to shake out. I also have a page too where I show who I'm higher or lower on among the consensus, and one of the boards that I used to measure the consensus was the great board over at the Swish Theory website. And yeah, I'm excited how it shook out. I'm excited to share it with y'all, but I appreciate you having me on this show. It was fun.
Absolutely, man. So really appreciate you taking the time. Got to check out the NBA Draft Guide, subscribe to the Substack, and let's see what happens. What are the Grizzlies up to this summer? We're about to find out. And thanks again, man, taking the time. A lot of fun talking hoops.
Absolutely, I appreciate it.
Learning Basketball is a Swish Theory podcast hosted from Beyond the Arcade. Hey, that's me. You can find my work on Twitter, YouTube, Substack, and check out the team's writing at theswishtheory.com.
With Ryan.
Today we are learning basketball with Eric Weiss of Luceo Sports, crowd scout, formerly of Draft Express, head of NBA scouting there, just director of learning, former draft and development consultant all over, covers the draft and scouting and team building with the NBA, and just a smart basketball mind. Love to pick his brain. How you doing today, Eric?
I'm good, man. I'm excited for the off season to to kick off now that there's been a big shot fired.
Hey, how about that? The offseason's officially started while the finals are still going on. We got Game 5 last night, but the Magic just can't wait any longer. They found their guy. They hear he's available. They don't want anyone else to get him. We're talking a little before the pod, like maybe they paid a little extra to get him, but they got their guy, and they stamped it. They don't have to wait any longer. They know who they wanted. And Jeff Weltman even talked about afterwards in kind of the post-conference after the trade, with some interviews, just a handful of things where they didn't think Desmond Bane would even be available when the season ended, and they decided they would go on this hunt for proven star power. And that once they heard through their intel that the Grizzlies are kind of under a little regime change and they might be, changing their path as a team, suddenly Bane is available. So they put all their picks together. They put together a deal. The Magic did what I kind of expected them to do, but a little bit extra draft pick wise. Like I thought the trade was always going to be, let's try to keep this young core together, as many of these rotation players together that we know fit well, that are young and complement each other. And let's use all our extra draft capital and some of these salary players, role players on good salaries to kind of build a trade package from there. A lot of Cole Anthony's contract kind of made him the prime candidate to be in the deal. And they ended up trading, a little confusing, but I think ultimately was 4 first-round picks with two pick swaps included in that. So it's a pretty huge package. As you said before, it's kind of similar to what the Knicks did with Mikal Bridges.
Yeah, I think that's I obviously hit you up randomly yesterday, and I was like, hey, you want to talk about this? And obviously should have known you had already had some stuff queued up, but it kind of gets me excited. Kind of scaling back stuff we've talked about on and off, but like we're kind of entering into the first real summer of the new CBA. Like, even though it's been in effect for a few years, this is really where, any teams that were, which is rare, but any teams, Boston in particular as a focus, is like into the new penalties, and people have had a little bit of time to wrap their heads around it. And I think this is going to be the first season we see how contracts, are kind of managed. And for this trade, especially, I think it was really interesting because this is a team going for it. And that's something like you said, before the pod, just like, what's this price, right? And Mikal Bridges was the big one last year, and like in a vacuum, in like every team, like you're just doing the standard dickering because you're interested in a player, and you're like, what is the value? Is it an overpay? Yeah, if you take the average deal that every team would offer for a team, but like value's relative. And for Orlando, just like New York the year before, and I think more so because I do think that this is a more complete team for a number of reasons to get into, but like you're paying for certainty. You are paying to get ahead of the market. You're paying to not have to have them shop your offer to other teams and see if they can get stuff. And you're also paying with the idea that this is not just like adding a nice player that fills a need, but finishing, let's say finishing, because this team, like, let's not forget that like most of them are under 25 and are also still developing, and that, we'll get into that a little bit, but like you're paying for the missing piece. And it's been, we've talked about it a bunch. I never brought up this name as I just didn't consider, like, same thing that Weltman said, like it just wasn't considering Desmond Bane to be somebody that was like available in any scenario, but like perfect complementary piece. Did not realize he was, like, by some objective measures, like the third best 3-point shooter in the league since he's been in the league. That's obviously significant. And that's, I think, what you're looking at. Obviously, some of it's, oh yeah, they're taking the money off, whatever. Everyone's trying to rationalize where what the cost was for all of this. And some of that's taking KCP's contract, who was objectively terrible, last year, just not what you were looking for. But predominantly this is about speed, right? You want to get something done, and that if you get it done, yeah, it'll hurt a little bit. Like, shit costs money, right? You pay more, you get more. Like, that's how it works sometimes. Everything's not going to be a 30% discount, right? Like sometimes you're going to pay a premium, especially if you want to get something done fast and you believe that it is worth it. And I think that's what's most interesting about this, is that they targeted their guy. They got it done quick. They got ahead of the market, so they didn't have to deal. They kind of took everybody by surprise. And now they have like a pretty substantial upgrade. You look at their top four. You look at the fact that they kept all of their recent draft picks out of that, and whatever you think about those guys, I tweeted it the other day too. It's like, well, all the role expectations, right? It's one of my big development things, is like situational development. Like, the expectation no longer has to be one of those guys becomes like your high volume perimeter scoring threat. It doesn't mean that they don't have career objectives themselves, but like in terms of what you need out of like Ant Black, Tristan Da Silva, who I think, a long time I've liked Paolo playing the 5, which I was very excited in the playoffs when they did that sometimes, because I'm like, no, it makes way more sense. Like, they're really good defensively. I don't care if he's a center. I'm like, there's some things you really can't deal with that way. But like, they have some real cool lineup flexibility with guys whose roles in terms of development scale down. Because you're not looking for that thing where you're like, oh, I don't know if any of these guys can turn into that thing. You don't need them to do that now. They just need to be very good at like complementary basketball, which we are watching really on both sides of the finals, right? Like, as good as Oklahoma City is and the rise of, Jalen Williams and all that, like, we're looking at 2 ensemble teams that play well 1 through 8 or even 9 off the bench. And like, guys that complement each other, like, is worth way more than just, talent stacking without great fit, in my opinion.
Yeah, you've hit on this before in our talks, where you're getting like the combined sum of its parts effect of the complementary of it all, where a lot of the skills these guys bring are additive and not really taking away from each other. Like, no one's like an awesome ISO scorer, but that means everybody else kind of has to just sit there and watch. Like, all these guys can dribble, pass, and shoot, defend really well, move the ball. You've hit on how important it is to have quick decision makers at every position. And now I almost I've a long time compared the setup of the roster construction to like what Boston has been doing. It felt like we were on a similar trajectory, but now I'm gonna throw a death lineup at you. Like, what if we got Bane and Suggs out there? Are Steph and Clay lighting up 6 or 7 threes a game? We got Anthony Black in like an Iguodala point forward type defensive role off the bench. We got Franz and Paulo. We can shift up like Barnes and Draymond at the 4-5. Like we're killing people in 2K now. Like no one wants to see the team in 2K, but that like you said, that small ball lineup, just having that option. And then what I like about the construction is they use a lot of the rest of their salary on different types of bigs that can all play with these guys. And that kind of helps with the depth piece. When you lose 2 bigs to injury, at least you have 1 or 2 capable ones. It helps with the matchup piece with who you're playing and giving your coaches different options for different lineups. And then it helps with the trade piece of maybe one day you find that long-term center that you really love and you package a few of them and bring him in. I'm still kind of hoping Wendell bounces back enough. And to the point, that last point, like it's super underrated just having this many guys that can dribble the ball and create. Like I kind of joked on the last podcast, there's like 5 ball handlers without 1 point guard, but they don't really need a point guard because they can all handle, they can all create, they can all score in different ways and like create in kind of different ways. And they're complementary in the sense that like some of them are knockdown high volume shooters. Some of them are lockdown perimeter defenders. Some of them are Paolo, obviously more of a scoring oriented, tough shot maker, like the star to build everything out from. But to your point, instead of asking Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum to take turns, we need somebody to go off for 30 every night just to have a chance. Now you have Drew Holiday and White out there too, where you just need 2 guys to go off for 20 that you might not expect, and everyone can is the important part. Like you have in Orlando's sense, you have at least 4 guys, Suggs, Bane, Franz, and Paolo, that can go off for 20, if not 30, on any given night. Maybe a little less so with Suggs on that scale, but these are 3 proven stars. Bane's last 4 seasons is just averaging 20 points a game, 5 boards, 4 to 2 assists, like 60% true shooting, lights out 3-point shooter. To what makes him arguably like the 3rd best shooter in that stretch is the versatility of it all. Like he's like 38, basically 40% on any 3-point shot, like off the dribble, catch and shoots, movement shots, on or off the ball. So like offensively, it just like seems like the absolute cleanest fit. And the one last reason I think they did like make this move now instead of waiting, on top of all the points you made about why keep looking, why try to find slightly better value with 1 less pick through endless negotiation to try to save a pick. Like you got the answer to your solution and you didn't have to give up your core to do it. You checked both boxes. It's gonna take a few extra picks or some unprotected like juice to kind of make those picks a little more worth it to make it happen. You touched on how if KCP and Cole's salaries are bad salaries, then you're probably going to have to attach some picks to that as well to kind of get off of that. So that's where some of those pick value come into play, where there's so many being sent out. But the what mostly stood out is I was on a roll, but I just blanked on where I was going to end that point, But it was essentially that they all complement each other. They all can. You don't let, to your point, you don't need all of them to be superstars every night when you have 4 stars, all of whom are plus defenders, and all of whom can go off for 20 any night. And that was my last point, was the defense aspect. That of all the rumored names that were attached to Orlando for these offensive fixes, a Jordan Poole or an Anthony Simons or Kobe White or whoever it may be, none of them were defenders as well. Like Desmond Bane is the only name on this list who's a lights out shooter, an offensive star, and a positive defender, if not an elite defender. So you don't sacrifice the team identity of Coach Mosley's defense and hustle culture. If anything, you strengthen it with someone who's like a model professional and all about the right things that this Magic team loves to kind of hear and see the player stand for.
Yeah, he's a perfect fit from a like team culture standpoint, as well as the like missing skill set, right? And I think that's huge. Like I don't think there could be a better fit, and I think that's also another thing too. Regardless of what you think about Desmond Bane and the value of the trade and all that stuff, like the fit is tremendous. And to your point, like things that we know, like this team didn't have to sacrifice anything defensively. They don't have like a true huntable guy. They can put out a lineup where you can maintain that same level of defense, much like Houston, right? Like the big problem with both of those teams and what was a huge limiting factor, highly competitive series that they played, but like just could not score consistently enough to like make it happen. And that's despite the fact that like Paolo Banchero and Franz like were absolutely standing on their head. And I think that had a lot to do with this trade too, because they go into their second foray into the playoffs or whatever, right? And they're just like absolutely doing all the things, and at their age and level of experience and all that you have to bank on something. There's no guarantees, and in this world that things continue on a trajectory. But if you're going to show like that, then you're going to feel like, hey, we have the hardest answers to get. We have like a 1 and a 2 like option, and is it as good as any 1-2 combo in the league? No, but you and I have talked about this before. I think what people are starting to see now, and something that I have long suspected, like I just think it's easier. I don't want to say it's lazy, but it's easier to build a team when you can just like stack. I call it just stacking talent. You're like, just get guys and just figure it out. They're good players. Like they'll learn how to do whatever. It's like if you have the means to do that, it's much easier just to like collect resumes, right? And just be like, oh yeah, figure it out. And that was kind of the big 3 era and all that. It's just like get guys, and and you're actually overpaying relative to what you get. And I think we're seeing, like I said, with the 2 teams in the finals, hopefully making this a little bit more in vogue. It's like, well, there's another way to do this. Like, I don't know if Indiana has like any stars, like by the traditional measure of like, okay, yeah, they have some guys that have made all NBA and all that, but like everyone's been obsessed with this, like must have a top 10 player, whatever the hell that means. And it's like, okay, but if you build, I've watched Olympic basketball, right? I still remember the 2006 when like Puerto Rico smoked the USA basketball. I'm like, if the ball moves fast and everybody knows what's happening, like you can do a lot of things, right? And the marginal difference in talent in the NBA is not as significant as people think. And it's like, yeah, if you build the exact same way as everybody else, then the person that has the 2 best guys is going to win, which is why you have that old adage, like the team with the best player wins. Is like, yes, if you do the exact same thing as the other team and the other team has the better player, then the other team is probably going to win if you're doing it the exact same way. It's like, so maybe the new thing is like, okay, like Indiana, they can play 48 minutes and sub guys in and out and barely lose like any like continuity in what they do. They don't just run the same shit worse, right? They kind of morph to what their talent is on the floor. And so they have a much lesser drop off. And that's what you see in like lineup data most of the time, right? It's like, oh, when this player's off, the team tanks. So you have to like survive the minutes that player's off, because you're built in a certain way where you're just like hoping to mitigate the damage, versus a team that really leans into being multiple and understanding how to do different stuff relative to what's out there. And I think that's the value of having, kind of 4. Let's just stick with like the 4 main guys. I do have a lot of interest in some of these other guys, but it's like, well, one, you can stagger minutes and you can have like different focal, like you can do a lot of stuff when you have 4 dudes that can put the orange ball in the hoop, right? And that allows you to put different configurations. You're not asking like necessarily any of them individually. Obviously, some of them more than others. Like Paolo is probably going to be carrying the offense a lot when he's out there in Franz. But like you can do different things. You can take advantage of what they do, and you can like attack in different ways, and that allows you to cover. I'm a big 48-minute believer. Like, what can you do for 48 minutes? How many? And I think that the NBA has been moving this way, but as a football background person and being from New England, obviously, like the big thing that first stood out to me when I was kind of watching the Patriots dynasty was like Bill Belichick was the first guy that didn't like have special teams be dudes that didn't play like anywhere else. There's like, oh, we're just going to allocate a big portion of the roster for dudes that just do this one thing, right? He started integrating. Then he started becoming multiple game plan offense, right? Game plan offense, instead of running your traditional 3-4, and that was your base. And now everybody does it. Everyone's multiple. There's no like base defenses, right? You don't have most of your guys playing 90% of the snaps in football. You rotate in based on keeping guys fresh, but also doing matchups, right? So you're playing a full 60-minute game in that instance. But like, I think that the positionless basketball thing and the matchups that we've heard, I think it was just inevitable that a team like Indy was going to come along and be like, yeah, like actually you don't have to restrict your rotation in the playoffs and go with less guys. It's like, it's actually an advantage if you can do different stuff and keep the other team, that you can be more energetic, but you can also just throw different looks at people and not let them get comfortable, because you have different versions of yourself. You're basically a game plan, team. You're using all 8 or 9 guys to do stuff. And I'm hopeful with the depth on this team that it won't just be about, hey, we get to the playoffs and play like 7.5 guys and we just spam you to death. Maybe in a series it makes sense, but I'm much more interested to see if this team, instead of trying to out best, the other team, will just simply just throw looks at them and it doesn't matter. And then it's like 8 is stronger than, 5.
Yeah, the depth and the roster construction of Indy and OKC is super interesting, and just just these styles of like these ultra competitive defense. Like what is the theme of this playoffs to me is that this level of pace has translated to the postseason, where I think I correlate it with like less talented offenses that just need easy buckets, that are just trying to play fast to try to steal a few extra possessions, a few extra buckets. That's generally where I feel like the biggest advantage normally has been with pace. Although obviously, like, every team just wants to play with pace, off turnovers. You want to play fast and get easy looks. It's fast break transition, like as easy, or the easiest type of shot you could get, really. But normally that doesn't translate to the playoffs. Like the 7 seconds or less Suns, famously like built this culture of pace, but it was more offensive focus, and it just kind of came short in the playoffs. And I think the difference now, at least with these teams, is they're too like playing out of their mind defensively, and that the energy is all coming from that defense as well. And I mean, the Pacers play with so much pace; they run off anything, make or miss. Like you can't take a breath watching these games. I don't know if you caught last night's game at all, Game 5, but like you can't take a breath. Like the first quarter, just right out of the gates, like J-Dub just attacking downhill nonstop, like unstoppable to the rim, and Matherin making these highlight plays with the chase down block and the up and under reverse putback, and Halliburton maybe being a little hobbled, still getting some assists. But it was a cool game last night, or at least because the Pacers did their thing with the big comeback, and then the Thunder held their own. Like J-Dub answered the call, I thought, as like he is a guy built for this moment. Put up like some crazy, I think it was like a Scottie Pippen type box score, but it was at least 40 points in the finals. Like making a great case as one of the best players in this series, and just cool to kind of see a new style, as you say, that doesn't have to be like what you're getting at. I think is just the depth of the variety of options, like giving yourself as many options as possible and being good to great at all of these different options, and understanding all these options like it's a chess game where every single in maybe in football it's more so every possession because of the in and out of the substitutions, but basketball it's thought of similarly, or maybe every quarter, every few possessions or whatever, but breaking up the game. I know the Pistons used to think like we're going to win one quarter at a time, like those 2000s Pistons, like they break it up one quarter at a time with their goal of like this is our game and we won that quarter, whatever it may be. So definitely interesting to think about. Just as you're hitting on, as the sports kind of become more modern, you just kind of have to be able to do everything, and you have to be able to be mobile enough and versatile enough to guard different positions or play different schemes. And that's where we're getting at in basketball too, where you just simply can't have holes in your game, whether it's defensively, whether it's you can't shoot or can't dribble and you're just stuck there, you can't pass. Like we're just slowly getting to that point where you really can't have holes in your game. And if you do, you better be like a super elite specialist at something else, like Tony Bradley getting minutes in the finals last night because he's and they're telling minutes. real minutes. So they're telling his story. It's like, yeah, he hasn't been in the NBA for 2 years, was on G League last year. Pacers just like picked him up like a few months ago, and now he's in the finals, like just getting minutes. And it's like he brings energy, rim rolling, and plays tough, rebounding, does the dirty work that you need. And sometimes you can get away with kind of a specialist role like that when you have when it's a luxury and you're not relying on it to do more than they're capable of.
Yeah, well, having the option to take somebody out once an adjustment's made or whatever, but like you can throw different things in. I really like that, and especially with with the way that Orlando's constructed and kind of looking at what we're looking at. Like, forget about just building for the incumbent, right? And we don't know who's going to be the winner now, like, yet. So I don't want to crown. Everyone's feeling good about their whatever. I'm like, it ain't over yet, but like, let's assume that Oklahoma City wins this thing. But you could look at both teams as a model. Like, I just don't know what the market is going to be for players that, like, dare I say, we might finally be valuing defense, even if we can't measure it effectively, that we might actually be putting a premium on defense now instead of just kind of like, I don't know, knowing it's generally important, but somehow justifying a slick offensive player's contribution and then just kind of going, we'll figure it out. Like, we'll figure out. Like, it's like, I think the simple answer is like, no, you want to ideally not have any holes in the lineups that you put out, and not just kind of it's a nice to have. I think that is very much going to be a targeted thing where teams are trying to build, because we've always said that kind of defense wins championships thing, but like more acutely, it's like, yeah, you can stay in a game and you can do a lot of things and go through offensive lulls. It's not like these playoffs, especially with the physicality, kind of coming back into the game. It's like what you really are going to do is go in spurts where your offense is going to like have these little runs and do whatever. But what you want to do is really just be tough and continue to be active and make it really difficult to score so you can mitigate these huge runs. And then you can also kind of put the clamps down to give you a chance to come back when a team has gone on a run. And that's really hard to do if you have a pigeon on your team somewhere, getting hunted like on every single play, and you have to roll your defense over. And I think that's what is really the most intriguing about the Magic is they were already legitimate defensively. Everybody knows it. But now, like, the compounding effect of having a Bane, that's the last thing. It's like, how much easier it gets for like everybody, because you can have like Suggs is a great 3-point corner shooter, right? So like you have Baines and Suggs doing any kind of like split action or any kind of off-ball weak side stuff. Paolo loves to attack from that right slot, right? So you're just like, okay, how are you configuring a defense to deal with this stuff? Because he's a freight train coming down. You have easy outlets on the weak side. You have all kinds of movement that you can do with those guys. They're already instinctual, to your point. You're not just talking about guys that can do some stuff offensively. You're talking about 4 main guys that are really connectors in a lot of ways at their best. So they each of them collectively have to do less, right? You don't have to waste an extra few possessions trying to get her done because you're desperate for something. So everyone's burden gets lightened. Then you have the compounding effect of their collective presence making the defense more diluted and having to deal with more things. It's like, why do you get excited about one guy? Why is it so transformative? I'm like, because the ripple effect of adding, it's not just one dude that shoots, it's the impact collectively that it has that makes it easier for everybody else to make smarter decisions and also have better looks in which to make them. That's the difference. It's more than one guy. It's what that one guy does to impact the overall like scheme of the other team. And that's exciting to think about.
Exactly, man. I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, like the Magic can now just run, I don't know, a floppy set, and the defense will actually have to care about 2 different people that are running around instead of just ignoring everyone.
Instead of just rolling help to the 2 dudes that are going to do 95% of the score.
Oh, you're sending shooters to the corners? All right, we're just going to stay here in the paint. That's you go ahead. Have fun with that. They can't do that anymore. So
Absolutely
I think like that idea alone, like just the idea that there is now a decoy or 2 that Bane and Suggs can represent as shooters to kind of space the floor and actually have the threat that, like, the idea of shooting gravity that kind of comes with Steph Curry. Just the idea that, like, the biggest thing they needed was someone to draw 2 on the ball in pick and roll at the top of the key, in my opinion. Like that specific need, someone who can draw two defenders out and make the right reads and actually hit someone else to create a little space for everyone else. And that only happens if you're a high volume pull up 3-point shooter, and Desmond Bane is. And let me ask you, how many I kind of hit on it earlier, how many high volume 3-point shooters, pull up or catch and shoot, are also plus defenders, let alone good playmakers, let alone good scorers? Like, let's just sit here. Who's like the closest player to Bane in the league? Is a very like complete guard that I don't think has a ton of comps. Like a I don't even know, like Jaylen Brown kind of is an all around guard, but he's better. But like
different position. That guy scales up to like
he's a little bigger.
Right? It's a totally different thing. Bane, like, for his size, right? Yeah. Like I can't come up with, and I'm sure if I
and I'm looking through like Derek White maybe has some comparisons there. Like I'm hitting you with some Boston
harder
guys.
To post up. If White has any, and I don't want to disparage White, who's awesome, but like White doesn't have the core strength. It's different, but I'd say that's at least a,
or how many like Thunder players who are full of all these all defensive types, how many have the offensive skill set that Bane has as well? Like he'd probably be like third or fourth in that pecking order in the J-Dub territory, maybe right after J-Dub just had this awesome night. So I'll tip the hat to him and say like right in that category. But the point is just very, very rare for, there's all these offensive talents. And the big challenge, I tweeted it the day before the trade, like the big challenge to me was, how is Orlando going to fix the offense without sacrificing the defense, the team identity that has gotten them this far for years? And this was almost the only answer. And it was an answer they didn't even think existed when the season ended. So they probably thought they would have had to cover up whoever they trade for with defense. And now you just continue to build out because you're building a core that doesn't have many flaws. And the flaws they do have mostly can be covered up with the right floor balance. And that's the whole challenge of team building. Like if Franz is a little unproven of the 3-point shooting, if that's his kind of like Achilles heel, how about you throw two sniper 3-point guards next to him? And I think people are underrating the Suggs element here because he was a 40% shooter, 7 threes a game 2 seasons ago when everyone was healthy. Last year, he went down, but he only played 35 games. And the games he did play, 20 or 25 of them, Paulo was hurt. So he was the point guard with no Paulo.
Yeah.
Extra usage, extra ball, and extra touches on the ball. That's not his normal role. And his percentages went down. So I would suspect exactly what you're saying. The sum of its parts, just adding Bane and bringing Suggs back in the mix. Now you have two legitimate, obviously Bane much more proven, but two legitimate 3-point snipers to stretch the floor immediately that frankly just weren't there last year and definitely wasn't there. There was only 5 games with Franz, Paulo, and Suggs playing together. So it definitely wasn't there with all 3 of them together. But, that I think Suggs returning to his supplementary secondary role with Paulo and Franz back, and now probably even more secondary with Bane. Like I would kind of expect Bane to do a little more of the on-ball scoring creation, more proven touches, and Suggs kind of go down to more of like a point guardy connector type role. I still kind of think Suggs will guard the point of attack running through screens, and maybe Bane will be more offensive focused because of the strengths of their skill sets and kind of balancing that energy of who's going to do what. But like Suggs might be the best point of attack defender in the league, and Bane's a lot more proven scoring and shooting at this point. So I think that's kind of how those roles will break up. But that what you said before, I hadn't totally thought about either. Just the 48-minute element of like, not only can they stagger 2 stars at every time, you could stagger 2 stars at every time, where maybe you find a really nice balance of lineup with like a Suggs playing off Paulo or a Bane and a Franz having some sort of interesting chemistry. Maybe it's a Bane Paulo pick and roll that you didn't expect to create good offense, but suddenly against bench units, it's killing it or something like that. So that is a huge advantage beyond just like the injuries and the matchups, but actually being able to basically build bench lineups that have 2 starters or stars in them at all times.
Yeah. And I know it's kind of nerdy, but like the ability for their guards to screen is pretty exciting too, because they're both just like
These are
brick
the strongest
walls.
guards in the league.
And they're compact too, so it's annoying. They're hitting you like I have a 4-year-old. He runs into my stomach all the time. It's like it's kind of the same thing. They're low, so you don't always see them coming when you're like looking up, and then they're just got such a low center of gravity, and they're so compact. But like, yeah, I think Suggs is easily going to be the greatest beneficiary of this, because they were really trying to get him up to that proverbial like third scorer role, and forget about all the other stuff that you said, which is like I don't think a lot of people realize when they look at this team. It's like, okay, yeah, they did what they did. I think at one point before the Paolo injury, I think they got up to third in the Eastern Conference for like a week something.
They were the 3 seed with Paolo, and they held the 4 seed through the Paolo injury. It was the Franz injury that cost
once
them
they
the
had 0
well.
scorers, then it was tough.
Yeah,
but
after 30 games,
having no scorers is tough to win. But and they did a pretty good job at not completely falling off the face of the earth. But like, they were already getting my attention early. Was the point, and it was like, okay, like Suggs can now focus in on what he is best at. And he can now do things that are more conducive. Like you can optimize his offense. And like, yeah, he's going to have big games. He's talented. But like, I look at Desmond Bane's like a real dude. And like that he really got on my radar huge when Ja was out the season before. I was like, oh shit, like this dude just took his game to a whole nother level. I'm like, this guy can score 25 points a game on like good efficiency. So like you've added a real guy. Like, Suggs can be that in-between dude. You know, he loves crashing. He moves off ball really intelligently. Now he doesn't have to do as much shit offensively off ball. He can stay in the spots. Like, I would love to look at the splits last year on like how much was above the break and how much was in the corners, what the contested stuff. Yeah, when you all of a sudden spend a good portion of your time scaling up in terms of offensive attention and where you are on the game plan based on what the personnel is on the court. Yeah. If you're not a pure shooter, you might have a slight downturn. Suggs is going to have optimized shot diet this year, and he's going to be able to work all those cracks in between while defenses are recovering, trying to figure out how to deal with the other three. Like, I think he will absolutely feast on just broken plays and like hustle points and like all the fun stuff that I love in players when they're just kind of like running around, picking up what I call loose change, just like sitting there, just like, just collecting, hustle stats. Like that's like his best role. And he probably might be a little bit more durable. I don't want to bank on that because he throws himself around like a crazy bastard. He probably needs to like learn how to, he's young.
Yeah.
He's 24. At some point, we all learn that you can't, like, sometimes you fall down 8 times and you don't get back up 9. Like, it's even Dwayne learned that eventually. It's like, he's going to do less. But
he's still at that age where he just bounces right back up.
Yeah,
he doesn't even feel
I'm unstoppable. But I think he is going to be like the fit. Like, it's all academic until we see it. But like, on paper, this is one of the most, like, when I looked at the price and then like ending off with that, I'm like, okay, cool. So most of those picks and maybe the swap, because we, this new era, we don't know how long but like this team's young. Their core is expensive, but again, it's the same thing. It's like, okay, if you don't need to make a lot of trades, you have a ton of upside, so you can make trades. The aggregation thing and getting into the restrictions on what you can do are significant. But if it's mostly money and you have a window, like, you don't really theoretically need anything else. And you can pivot out of it if you need to, because these guys have value. You're like, oh, they gave up stuff. It's like, cool. So like, people will still want Desmond Bane and Jalen Suggs and like other dudes. So it's like, you can always redo stuff, reinvent. As a, Bostonian, like talking to my friends all the time, like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum have had like 4 team iterations around them, right? Since they're, but like, seasons change, things move around. The hardest thing to do is get your main guys. And if you believe, which clearly Orlando believe, and rightfully so, with the performance, it's kind of like a dress rehearsal this year. It's like the team didn't have everything they needed. You want to see how Paolo and Franz handled themselves, and they were an absolutely unstoppable force. So like, give these guys some help and bank on that being something that they can do. right? Like, and we're kind of an instant gratification, we are an instant gratification culture. Like what was the narrative around Jalen Williams, right? Bringing that up before coming in here. And I'm like, dude, the guy is younger than most players having to play that role, doesn't have that much playoff experience. Like, yeah, they had a large run last year and they're getting a little bit more. But if you look at like the normative sample of like second option guys or whatever, I'm like, can we let people evolve a little bit? I'm old enough to remember when teams had to go to the playoffs and lose like 4 or 5 times before, right? Like back when, it's old school basketball, but it's like there were patterns where teams weren't just like, oh, they lost, they can't get by them. Let's see if they can do it the second time. No, they can't. Blow it up. And that seems to be the world we're in now, where it's like sometimes you just need more reps to, ponder things and figure it out and like get better. And it's like, yeah, the key is having dudes that can do it and having some evidence that it's possible. And then you're hoping you can ramp up the frequency, right, of those big things. And Orlando did that last year. So I love that the fact that they're like, let's just lean into that and be like, yes, the East is wide open and all that, but like, even if it wasn't, it's time to throw your hat in the ring and be like, yeah, I think we have something here and we're ready to, to take it to the next level. Right. It's like the quote from Avengers, man, fucking Thor's like, they're ready for a higher form of warfare. So this is where they're at now. They're upping the ante and they're ready to play big boy basketball. So that's exciting.
Hey, you know what Weltman said is time to go all in. They pushed all the chips in, and some good things to hit on there. I looked it up while you were talking there. Suggs 29.7% on 200 above the break threes, and only took 28 left corner threes for 43% and 8 right corner threes for 50%. So, 200 of his 230 3-point attempts last year were above the break.
He was on ball, right? Trying to cosplay
exactly.
as a top option. He's a scrapper, but now he doesn't have to do that stuff. Now you can deploy him where he's most lethal instead of being forced to try to get something out of him.
Exactly. And that theoretical paper fit is where I'm all in on the connective nature of it all. And I guess I'm thinking too, we also just said worst case, you're people are kind of making it out like the Magic went all in and are now stuck with this core no matter what. They're all young players that are considered either all defense or all-star potential type of guys. Who's to say they couldn't, if they didn't love the fit with Suggs and Bane, they could still package a Suggs and a Black and a Da Silva and a first for another star. I mean, that's not off the table if they wanted to just flip it up all again. But that's worst case scenario, where if the big gamble doesn't pay off, at the very least, you still can. You're not stuck and the team is just stuck in the middle of nowhere on the way down. You're on the right trajectory. You want to get stuck with this group, as you're saying, like this. You don't need to clear salary when you have something to spend the salary on. All this stuff about flexibility is for moments like this. It is 10 years of flexibility so you can actually do a trade to get a guy like this. And not only did you get probably the perfect guy, and all the points on Suggs especially I think are great there. And I'm just excited to kind of see how that part of it all plays out. I can't wait. I'm hype. I think, like I said on the last on the emergency pod, I think this team proved they were a top 4 East, top 2 defense in the league type of team 2 years ago. And that was a really close playoff race. They did it again last year when, the first year, I thought everything went right. They exceeded expectations. It was all fun. Now we have expectations. Half the guys get hurt. It's no fun for half the year because everyone expects to be a good playoff team instead of just happy to be there. But now those expectations are what probably filled this trade. That disappointment this last year, even if it was injury-based, kind of made it clear, even if they were fully healthy, they still need a little bit more juice, a little more offensive punch, and they got it. They I don't know if Orlando has, frankly, ever had this level of it's tough to compare volume to the older days with the Rashard Lewis or a Ryan Anderson, but I don't know if they've had a shooter like this like ever, let alone in the last like 10 years. But credit to the OG power forwards
Dennis
back
Scott.
there from 09. Yeah, 3D Dennis Scott. No doubt, 3D.
I don't even know if he
legend.
was that much of a move shooter, man. That was a long time ago, and I was like 12. But
he was hitting the catch and shoots. At least 3D. I mean, you got to shout out 3D. But just look like between volume and storing versatility, the shot profile, and just being efficient in so many different types. Like, I can't wait. I can't remember the last time the Magic had, just a spacer like this that defenses have to actually respect. And the cumulative effect, as you hit on, should just create spacing all across the board and, create easier plays, like you say, like less burden, less usage, less touches, and more just high field plays of, connective basketball, read and react, and no one has to take the entire attention of the defense now and deal with that pressure. They can all kind of share it and spread it out and actually just do their thing and play with a normal amount of spacing. So can't wait to see how that turns out.
It's going to be very exciting. I got to jump now and do the morning routine, but yeah, it was fun. I just very excited. I'm gonna say fall can't get here soon enough because I do enjoy the summer, but I am very much looking forward to watching this team. They've always been, one of my league pass teams. Worked with the team for a long time. Spent quite a bit of time down in Orlando as a kid and as a professional. So like a lot of good memories and experiences. And this is definitely the most excited I've been in quite some time for, like, I think this is a real contender. Like, I really do. And we'll see how it plays out. But like, when I look at this team, I'm like, I can see it, right? It's not just like we're kind of going for it. Like, I'm like, yeah, I can see them in the finals doing some real things. Yep.
Hey, I'm right here with you. Orlando has something to be really excited about, really for the first time since those Dwight teams on the come up, where this team is legit and here to stay. And yeah, to that point, man, I had one more thought. I'm too excited. My brain's just bouncing around too fast for me today. But just super excited to see how it plays out, man. As you said, like the Magic project to be already. Oh, that's what I was gonna say. They were. I thought they were already something of a playoff team. I view it as a pretender. Like they're happy to be there. They're good enough to make it, maybe win a round, and that's a good goal. And honestly, even with their playoff experience, I think the new expectation should be, let's just win a series and make a little bit of noise. Let's get some experience. Are they going to win it all the first year they threw it together? Probably not. They don't have that level of playoff experience. Could they make a deep run like the Thunder did last year and then, maybe reach a big stage, not quite live up to it and learn from it and then make the finals run a year or two after? That's kind of where I would expect it. But to me, they were a pretender in the playoffs because they were elite at many things, but the offense was just not holding up. They were elite defensively, elite rebounding, elite forcing turnovers, elite drawing fouls through their stars. So they're drawing a lot of fouls, they're creating a lot of threes, they're scoring at the rim, they're defending their ass off, and they're winning games off of all those things despite having the worst 3-point shooting in the league. If they can address the 3-point shooting and balance that aspect, it should not only raise the offensive team ceiling, the rating for the offense. It should raise each individual production, or at least their efficiency, because they're all asked to do less. Like it should just balance out the offense and give them enough firepower to go with all the elite team traits they already have that, to me, are already traits of a contender. Like they crossed off all the hard stuff first and now have to figure out how to put the ball in the basket. And now they did.
Yep. No, for sure. It's going to be, let's just say Jamal Mosley has a lot more options to play with. So we'll see how he approaches it. I think it'll be very interesting. And yeah, you always want things, but I would not be shocked if we see substantive changes in how they operate offensively, because they don't have to play the same way based on their limitations. So just leave it at that.
Yeah, can't wait to see how it looks. Maybe some modern spacing, modern sets. Who knows? Maybe Magic fans are going to be blown away by Coach Mosley. Nothing but good things to say about everything he's done to set the culture defensively and really just build like an identity for this team. So a lot of A lot of fun in Orlando. Thanks for taking the time today, Eric. It's just a great time. Always fun talking Magic hoops and NBA trades, and more so just think about how team building happens and what front offices are thinking and how are they valuing picks versus prospects and maybe their own timeline versus the what if of a future pick versus the proven commodity of a De Silva or an Anthony Black off the bench. Like, what you're getting. Why take a risk on a pick to maybe get one of those guys when you have one of those guys? So,
Yep.
You have your rotation set. That the risk of all the risk and what ifs, and we didn't dive into all the value of the picks, but I do think that while they're unprotected, while the Phoenix pick swap is definitely high value, they took a bet on themselves that their own picks are going to be in the higher, is going to be a worse pick because they're going to be a good team. They're going to be contending. And the odds that, the Phoenix or Washington pick swap thing ends up being a top 4 pick that would have been to Orlando, the odds of that happening are probably a lot lower than the odds of Desmond Bane working out.
They also already have
and I think that's
guy.
The bet.
That's the key difference. They're not trading away the potential for something they need in order to get something certain. Having the dudes lessens and again, it's like 14%, no guarantee, whatever, the flattened lottery odds and all that. But like the value of that pick is high. But when you already have, like, you get those picks to get your top 2 guys. Yeah, getting a way overkill, like, yeah, cool, add a new one or whatever. But like, there's not even a role for a guy to develop like that. Like, what does that guy turn into? Like, we've seen what big threes look like. I don't care if the guy is a fresh draft pick. You can't have 3 number 1 options anyway. So like, once you have the guy, the value of that pick is to make trades like this. And the other picks are whatever, they're in the 20s. The outcomes of those plays are just as high a probability as Tristan Da Silva and the rest of the like young guys that they kept, Ant Black. Like, you already have those guys too. So it's like, how many dudes do you want? Right. And I'll just leave it this, because I definitely have to go, because I hear the little one behind
there
me.
It is.
But
it's a calculated risk.
Tristan Da Silva, man. Like, I think he is, like, you're talking about connectors and like dudes that are perfectly slotted for like what this team can do. I just see a lot of Paolo at the 5 lineups, Franz at the 4, and I think he's going to play the 3 in a lot of these like things with Bane. And like, I think their best death lineup will end up at the end of the season. Let's just a little side bet here. I bet you this Paolo at the 5 thing is going to be the 4 dudes plus Tristan Da Silva. I'll just leave it at that.
All right, there it is. You got Da Silva. I got AB. We'll see who they roll out, and that's a great shout. I mean, Da Silva brings that scoring versatility. There were times where I thought he was like too good at last year and might like want to be a starter somewhere else. But if he's happy with his role, like, he brings some like impressive scoring versatility as kind of like a Franz light offensive option to just plug and play anytime you're missing Franz. Or, I mean, talk about a luxury to have. But appreciate you taking the time today, Eric. It was a lot of fun talking hoops, talking trades, talking front office, talking basketball.
Awesome. Yeah, pleasure. Thank you, man. Thanks for making the time. I'll talk to you soon.
Let's do it again. Have a good one.